perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Praise be to thee, most supreme God, omnipotent, omnipresent, all-pervading, the only being. Take us in thy parental arms, raise us from the denseness of the earth. Thy beauty do we worship, to thee do we give willing surrender. Most merciful and compassionate God, the idealized Lord of the whole of humanity, thee only do we worship, and towards thee alone do we aspire. Open our hearts towards thy beauty, illuminate our souls with divine light. O thou, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, all-powerful Creator, Sustainer, Judge, and Forgiver of our shortcomings, Lord God of the East and of the West, of the worlds above and below, and of the seen and the unseen beings, pour upon us thy love and thy light. Give sustenance to our bodies, hearts, and souls. Use us for the purpose that thy wisdom chooseth, and guide us on the path of thine own goodness. Draw us closer to thee every moment of our life, until in us be reflected thy grace, thy glory, thy wisdom, thy joy, and thy peace. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. May the message of God reach far and wide. Inspirer of my mind, consoler of my heart, healer of my spirit, thy presence lifteth me from earth to heaven. Thy words flow as the sacred river. Thy thought riseth as the divine spring. Thy tender feelings awaken sympathy in my heart. Beloved teacher, thy very being is forgiveness. The clouds of doubt and fear are scattered by thy piercing glance. All ignorance vanishes in thy illuminating presence. A new hope is born in my heart by breathing thy peaceful atmosphere. O inspiring guide through life's puzzling ways, in thee I feel abundance of blessing. O thou who art the maker, molder, and builder of the universe, build with thy own hands the universal, our temple for thy divine message of love, harmony, and beauty.
Okay. Today we are going to be working on Pierre Vilayat's teachings about Tibetan meditations. And he talks about it from a book which we have somewhere. Do you know where it is?
The
Clear Light of Bliss?
yeah, it's upstairs.
Oh, okay. We'll bring it down at lunchtime. By a Rinpoche Geshe Kelshen Gyatso. And so these practices are all pretty complex. So what I'd like you to do is just as we go through the day, do your best. Don't expect to suddenly get it instantly, because that's probably not going to happen. these are the kind of practices that you do for years until finally you very slowly slip into the state. And a lot of them you've already done, those of you that have been doing this for a while, you just didn't know it. It's Pure Vilayat's take on things. He tended to make combinations and then not necessarily tell you what he was combining. So, okay. Here we go. From Pure Vilayat. The human body is a perfect body in which to attain illumination. Which is an interesting thing to say when you think about it. You know, because what else have we got? Which is awakening. It is a matter of galvanizing, directing, sublimating, and coordinating forces latent in several interlocked vehicles of which the material body is one. Already we start. Think about that. What did he just say? Oh, by the way, just for your information, you can interrupt me and stop at any time. If you don't get something, ask me to repeat it, that's perfectly fine. The one rule that we have is no crosstalk. So if someone says something, you don't get to comment on it. I do, but you don't. Okay?
Fair enough.
Okay. Just make that clear. What do you think he's talking about? Several interlocked vehicles of which the material body is one.
I would think the material body, the spiritual body, the energy body, the thought body, the emotion body, all the ways that I experience.
That's one way to look at it. As you will find, that's not what he's saying, but that's a good way to think about it. Okay, anybody else? In other words, get your mind into that state of recognizing that there are aspects of your own being that you're not conversant with. Okay? No matter how long you've been doing this, there's always more.
Yeah.
Always. Right? It is important to know and explore the position and inner structure of the chakras. Then awaken and unfurl them and coordinate them into the network of corridors which link them. These corridors may just be nervous circuits within the central and autonomic nervous system, forming the underpinnings of consciousness. The objective is then to thread currents of energy called winds, of which breath is the more familiar form, through this maze, opening the chakras and integrating their activities. No doubt most of the chakras correspond to the plexi of the autonomic nervous system, or at least may be considered as their counterpart in the etheric body. Okay?
So, what I'm understanding is something I've never thought about before, is that each of the chakras, not just the crown chakra, has a connection with outside of the physical body.
Okay.
Is that what he's saying?
Yeah. Connection with that multifaceted being that you ordinarily recognize as the physical body, but which is much more.
He goes on to explain more.
Okay, all right, okay.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
We're laying the foundation now for what's
Right.
going to come later. The Sanskrit word chakra means wheel. And indeed, it is experienced as a juncture between various circuits, like the spokes of a wheel. They are also regarded as knots or strands that coil and interweave in complex ways. As the chakra unfurls, it does seem like a flower opening up. Hence, it is sometimes described as a lotus. Certain vowels or chakras or syllables are also used to open the chakra. Okay? Now here we're going to get it started getting into the practices. Ham or home is for the crown center. So it's like if you can manage the overtones. If not, it's okay. And just focus on that area about 2 or 3 inches above above the top of your head, and just if you get a little, any tingly thing there. How's that feel? Anything? Yes, no?
It's interesting to try to make it move up into the sinus like this whole area, to try to get it to resonate.
Yeah?
I felt like I was struggling to find the right tone that would bring it from the throat into this area.
Well, you're clogged up there. And
Yeah.
the sinuses is
Yeah.
Next time you come here, don't have a cold.
Nutty pot. Beth was right.
Okay. Anybody else have something happen?
Well, I could feel, the vibration filled my whole body, even though it was more centered here. Everything's like enlivened. Kind of a sense of enlivened sounds.
Can you get the overtones?
I don't know if I got them all, but I got a
You
couple.
got, okay. That's another trick to learn, to concentrate.
Yeah.
That took me a long time to learn.
How many can you get?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I
keep
get
practicing
4 or
it.
5, I
I
think.
used to practice it.
I'm not really sure. Like, you ever heard the harmonic choir? All those people can do it. It's very annoying.
The Tibetan monks.
Yeah. Okay. And you use Om for the throat, Hum for the heart, also Hu in the heart, an E or Il for the solar plexus, which resembles the E of Illa in the law of the Zikr. Okay, so we're only going down to the solar plexus. So there's Om for the throat, right? So let's try that. Center, not the physical heart, but the nerve plexus right here. Solar plexus. Illa, L, 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 That's it?
No, I felt the other one.
Did you feel the solar plexus?
Yeah, I did feel it.
I think it's important to take a minute after each one and settle into the vibration and pick up because there's an aftertone.
Okay.
Okay.
What's that feel like then? Because I'm noticing myself a kind of an opening, settling in perhaps. And we're just getting started. There's a lot more.
In practice then, would we just do them, just roll one after the other?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
In addition to the chakras listed in current yoga manuals, the Tibetans include the chakras situated midway between the throat chakra and the heart chakra It's called the Wheel of Fire and has 3 spokes and corresponds to the thymus gland. So about right here, right?
Okay.
You know what the thymus is right about here? The crown chakra, called by yogas the million-petaled chakra, is regarded by the Tibetans as having 32 spokes. Now this next bit, I don't know if it has any relevance to anything, but it's just informational. The third eye has 2 spokes, the throat has 16, the heart has 8, and the navel has 64. Notice he says the navel instead of the solar plexus.
Which
So that-
one does he mean?
Yeah, well, it's probably the Dantian,
Sometimes, yeah.
you know, that he's talking about.
I
Or,
wonder.
you know, because they would associate this whole area, you know, from the solar plexus down to like the third vertebra from the base as being the, you know. Okay, these are considered the 10 doors. Oh, I'm sorry. In addition are the sex chakras, what we call the second chakra, and the lower chakra that we call the root. These are considered as the 10 doors or inlets of energy linking the body energy fields with the energy fields of the universe, which could enter the body through any of these doors. What you were saying, right?
Yeah.
You just thought it was coming from but any one of these will allow access of the universe, or you can access the universe through any one of these doors. Okay. This is where it gets complex. Consider now the corridors or inner passageways.
Did you miss a sentence there?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Consider now the corridors or inner passageways. This first practice will consist in exploring these from the inside. Imagine you are a spotlight within this maze of corridors and can move freely within this labyrinth and even beyond it, perhaps into other dimensions. Your body is, on the whole, outside of you. In fact, it is the temple that you inhabit. You will first explore the central channel of the nervous system, which appears now as the shaft of a lift through which, or an elevator, remember use English, right? Through much narrower, though much narrower, or a chimney. You can, of course, go up and down it, stopping at each chakra to examine the interweaving strands and nerve pathways, the flow of neurotransmitters down the spine.
In the Qigong teachings, it's called Chiang Mai.
Called what?
Chiang Mai, and I've always called it the chimney. So when I was like, oh.
Okay. Okay, we'll just wait for Tasha. Legs. So how's everybody doing so far? How are you doing? How does that feel to you?
Good.
What do you feel about it? I realize this is pretty esoteric information for your first time ever.
I'm having a tough time articulating it.
That's okay. One of my particular rules or senses is that there's no such thing as a foolish question.
Okay.
At all, you know. And we have this kind of, especially for men, you know, never ask directions, right? We have this sense that somehow we must understand, even though we don't, right? So just disabuse yourself of that if you can,
Okay.
as much as possible.
It also helps to, when you're reviewing this, to sit up really tall, if she's sitting up tall, so that your back is straight, if possible, you know, as straight as, you know, you can be.
Okay. Flow of neurotransmitters. Consistently strong and repeated meditation will gradually open the central channel. You could examine each end. What a difference between the celestial energy at the top of the head and the earth energy at the bottom of the spine. Remember, each is a door opening into the outside of the temple. However, at the level of the solar plexus, you will notice that it tends to draw you inside into an inverted space or vacuum. Now you will discover two lateral channels called in yoga Ida and Pingala. Indeed, there are two lateral trunks of the autonomic nervous system flanking the spine left and right. Everybody knows that, right? Doesn't know that much anatomy. You have the central channel of your spine has nerves in it, and then there's two on either side.
And Inga, I thought it was
Ida
and
and
is the
Pingala.
feminine, and the Pingali
Pingala,
is the masculine.
It's just the left and the right.
just the left and the right. Yeah. No, they don't seem to have any kind of
Gender?
no.
I was
At least not in
taking-
this system.
I was taking notes, and I was just glancing at those notes, and I had from Pierre Beliat some tapes, old tapes, and I had that written down.
Yeah,
Well,
he did identify them as
But yeah,
well, maybe in a different system. Depends on what he's talking about. You know.
right.
Well,
Okay, well, let's
okay.
This would fit the left being feminine, the right being masculine.
What did you? I suppose it does.
Yes, it does.
Okay, moving right along.
So it's the Ida is on the left?
Ida on the left, Pingala on the right.
Right. Okay. The right channel is described as red. The left channel is white, and the central channel is blue, though traversed by a stream described as red, going between them. So there's communication, they're not isolated. Oh, and by the way, Murshid says this, but he also says that the right is red, the left is blue, and the center is white. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Doesn't really matter.
whatever, you know, I don't see colors, I rarely do, so I just get the feel the energy. So whatever you get is what you get. Don't necessarily. That's an important point whenever they were talking about these colors or any kind of. What's important to recognize always is your experience is your experience. To attempt to superimpose someone else's experience on you just is going to be frustrating.
And it becomes cerebral, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Then
Rather
it
than
becomes all
spiritual.
head stuff, right? Okay. If it happens to match, that's wonderful. You know. And you do find that when you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the practices, that there are commonalities that emerge. You know, that just makes sense no matter what the system is. Okay, the right one is supposed to be associated with verbal expression, left brain activity, and the left subjective, feeling, intuitive expression. So I guess that would be masculine, feminine from a certain point of view. At the juncture of each chakra, the right and left strands coil around the center channel. Okay, here we go. So you have it coming up the right and the left, but they kind of interweave around each chakra as they're moving around, right? So it's not just a straight vertical expression. It's all, you know. Well, when you think about it, that's exactly what the nerves do. The nerves interconnect at those nerve plexi as they're moving up the spine. You know, the nerves come out of the spine and connect at those places and keep moving up. Right?
So it looks like almost like the DNA strands.
Well,
Yes,
well,
that's
in
exactly.
fact,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Double helix.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sarah, it's your turn. Go ahead.
The winds concentrate wherever the mind is placed. So let's get into a posture for meditation. And we will concentrate on one chakra at a time. You will find that the life energy from the cosmos will concentrate on that spot, dynamizing and opening that chakra. So let's begin with the root chakra. Direct your breath and your focus of attention. And then to the second chakra below the belly button. And the solar plexus above the belly button. Now direct your breath and your focus of attention to the heart chakra. Allow your awareness to rise to the throat chakra. Direct your breath to the brow chakra. To the top of your head, crown chakra. And above there, the star chakra. Now take a big breath into your whole body and feel the physicalness of your body. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So how was that? Did anyone have a particular chakra that you felt particularly attuned to, or a chakra that felt like you couldn't find it or was blocked?
I had a sensation when went to my heart chakra, and felt like I went into a large chamber, like a balloon or something. They had those. I went in an underground pool cave thing, and Sinatos or something, and well, anyway, it was that.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. It's interesting.
And you were going to say something?
Yeah, lately I've really been struggling with the chakra work down at the root, and trying to leave that detritus and let it and it's just so notably like a void almost lately, like when you were talking about the
You might better chant in the other room.
Okay.
too much is going on, and it's been manifesting lots and lots of struggle. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if you heard that last part.
I didn't. Run it
Okay.
by me again.
I've been having difficulty in that root chakra and leaving that detritus behind and letting it all, from chakra to chakra, but even getting anything stirring in there, really focusing. So, hi, how are you? And I was saying when you were talking about all of these, being paths and passageways to the universe, I've been telling myself for the past few weeks that I've been really blocked here, but now during this practice, I started realizing I'm feeling like a void and really too wide open to the universe, and that like almost like a black hole, everything's caving into this area. So I'm wondering if I'm not being protected enough in this area.
This is a particular problem, I think, especially for women.
Okay.
You could be wide open in the
Yeah.
whole area of the
Yeah.
womb. And you have to kind of find a way to protect yourself there. It just to be careful. It's like
Yeah.
if you're, put a little guard up,
Mhm.
mental guard up
Okay.
somehow. I know that from doing healing work,
Okay.
that women are all healers are often taking a lot from down here in this womb area, and you just have to think of protecting that area a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get in posture again for meditation. You can consciously purify a chakra. We'll experience that now, one chakra at a time. So every time you exhale, imagine or observe that you're exhaling a smoky grayness from out of that chakra. And to begin with, we're going to inhale. Imagine you're inhaling only through the left nostril, and it's a radiant white light. So we'll begin one breath to each chakra, beginning at the root. White light in through the left nostril. Exhale, smoky grayness. And then begin again at the root, and this time imagine breathing red light in through the right nostril and exhaling smoky grayness. One breath to each chakra, beginning at the root. Then you can open your eyes when you've completed that. Now, steady concentration on a chakra and its visualization will not only cause it to awaken and open, but will induce its core to secrete a drop described as a kind of nectar. This is where it gets fun. Obviously, since the chakra corresponds not only to the plexi of the autonomic nervous system, but also to endocrine glands, by concentrating a lot of life energy into a chakra, one will enhance the secretion of corresponding hormones, besides affecting the flow of neurotransmitters along the nerve conduits. This will affect a change of state in the body. For example, a shift from catabolic to anabolic state. And this shift of the body will have an immediate effect on your mode of thinking and the focus of concentration. So let's begin again. And
Yes,
we will,
question.
yes.
the difference between catabolic and anabolic?
Anabolic is without oxygen, and catabolic is with oxygen. But I would ask you to speak to what he wrote, because
Beats me. I'll go
Okay.
along with your.
okay. I'm not sure why he chose that example.
I
I
don't know.
questioned that I
Yeah,
wondered
I
that
don't-
myself. Okay. So maybe we can think about it for the next month and come back. He just chose it as an example. He wasn't saying this is the shift. That's my interpretation.
I'm lost. Okay, I got it.
Here.
I got it. Yeah.
I don't think he
Okay.
needs to say this is it. I think he
Okay.
needs to give that as an example.
Okay. All right.
Alright, so let's get into meditative posture again. And imagine yourself within that central channel and visualize it as a chimney. And imagine yourself at that midpoint that was earlier described as an internal space. Ignite a little spark right in the middle of your solar plexus. And as it flares into a flame, the heat rises within the chimney. And as the live core of that chakra reaches the point of incandescence, a red drop is formed that drips downward into the chimney. It's like the wax of a candle melting. Continue to focus on that internal flame as the heat rises along that chimney to your heart chakra. And as the heart chakra reaches that state of incandescence, a drop forms and drips down the chimney. And the heat rises to the throat chakra. Until the drop forms and descends through the chimney. Follow the path of the heat to your brow chakra. And as it glows, it too forms this drop of nectar and releases it down the chimney. Now in the crown. Until the drop forms and is released into the chimney. Of course, we could stay here for a long time, but we have more work to do, so bring your awareness back to your physical body. When you're ready, you can open your eyes.
I want to emphasize that this is the kind of practice that you can do daily for years, and then it slowly develops. You know, if you get it the first time, can you duplicate it tomorrow and the next day, right? So So you just keep working on it until it's just automatic and natural, and you don't even, like me with the overtones when I first started, I didn't even know it existed until somebody did it, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. It took me a long time to get to the point to being able to do it. So it's, it's the same in all of these practices.
For me, not so much anymore, but at the beginning, I would have a fear that I would get lost in it.
Oh yeah.
So I still have that sense, but I'm not afraid of it.
That's a very common kind of.
So you kind of have to do it when you know you have lots of time,
Yeah.
because you may get to a space where you just want to hang out there for a while.
Right, and you have an appointment and somebody's waiting
Yeah.
for you. Modern life is a pain, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, life gets in the way.
Big intro.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's very nice. Prabhupada actually talks about that somewhere else, where he says that you can go into these very deep states, even into the void, what we call the black or fana, what's called annihilation. But you always get kicked back out, always. You're never actually stuck there.
Right. But sometimes it feels a little scary.
Yeah.
As you sense yourself going into
Yeah.
that, you're like,
Because it's an alternate universe, really.
Yeah.
It's something that's outside of the existence that you normally assume is you. And the thing to continually remind yourself is that there's more to you than you think there is. Right?
always.
And never stops.
Surprise.
Okay, Margie, you want to do that?
Yeah. So just, actually, this follows right along from what we were doing. So it's just continual flow. So go back to the center of the crown chakra, which you've just left. Just go right back to that point. Okay? Now visualize the center of the crown chakra, which the yogis call Bindu, and which is, I believe, the pituitary gland, gently poised on top of the hypothalamus. So you can think of the gland itself, which is in the middle of the brain, and then the flower of it comes above the head. Okay. As we know, it is a key hormonal gland, and may be the master control station of the entire endocrine system. As a result of intense, one-pointed concentration, it will be brought to the point of incandescence, this time burning into a vivid white light. The impression is of a white drop described as ambrosia, the host produced by the transmutation of the gross chemistry of the digestive system into the esoteric chemistry of hormones, neurotransmitters, enzymes, etc. So just think of that as being an ambrosia, a drop of ambrosia. All right. Just stay there a moment. We know that among the hormones secreted by the pituitary gland are endorphins, which greatly affect the psyche and also our attitude towards pain. The effect is enhanced by turning the eyeballs upwards, converging them, and curling the tongue upwards, pressing it against the palate. So do that now. Pressure and magnetism of the tongue as applied to the palate will enhance the flow of spinoacidic fluid in the fourth ventricle of the brain. Yogis and Tibetans and Sufis experience a taste, not in the mouth, but in the whole body, as though it had been flushed by an elixir of life, rejuvenating and causing ecstasy. One needs to check the descent of the dripping at each chakra level to give it time to invest each chakra in turn with its flavor. So previously we went up the chimney, this time we'll go down. Just imagining this and trying to experience this luminescence, this intense brilliance of light from the crown. The heat causing this to drip into this chakra below it. It's the third eye. Stay there a second. This is in the central channel. Dripping down into the base of the skull, which is the beginnings of the throat chakra. And into the throat, well, into the heart, I'm sorry. The solar plexus. The second chakra. And the root. Now for a moment, just jump right back up to the crown. Experience that. And then back down to the root and feel the difference. See if you can sense a difference there. Toggle back and forth. Now from the third eye, toggle back and forth between the second chakra and the third eye. Still with that sensation of heat. Intense concentration. throat and the solar plexus. Now go directly to the heart, to behind the sternum. And stay there a minute. Using your breath as a hard point of concentration. Now you may or may not feel this heat or this ambrosia. It's all right. It's like whatever it is that you do experience is also quite valid. So pay attention to whatever that you really do sense or experience or imagine or feel at that point. Color and sound. Could be a vision. Miss Allen, you got a picture of that.
I did. We got curious about, reading this initially. Where is that sentence? Oh, right. The pressure and magnetism of the tongue as applied to the palate will enhance the flow of spino-acidic fluid in the fourth ventricle of the brain. And we thought, okay, what's that mean? There it is. God bless Wikipedia. Right?
Pass it around.
If you look around, if you look at that drawing there, the fourth ventricle is the one that looks like it's dripping down. Isn't that cool?
And the slender one.
Yeah. So all everything that he's talking about has a correspondence in the physical body, but also all your other bodies, which can tell you that you're like, what's that infinite regress kind of imagery? The idea is that if you're looking in, I talked about this last month, if you're looking into a mirror and then there's a mirror behind you, you'll get a sense of infinite regress. But in this case, all of these bodies become finer and finer and finer and finer, rather than just a mirrored, echoed image, right? That's kind of what's taking place. It's one way to think about it.
You can think about the integration of all the chakras, that they all work together instead of being like separate entities in a sense, but they're integrated.
I found in this practice that once I got into the lower chakras, it was more difficult for me to get to here. So I was watching that, and I thought, well, maybe, I hang out a lot in the lower chakras because of Tai Chi. And so at the very end, it occurred to me that I don't consider this as much a part of me as the others do. So that I need to work on that. Yeah. Like this is the divinity, so it's not really me. All of this is me. Pulling that in.
Well, I might remind you in Tai Chi that not only do you have the dantian, but that your posture, that you be thinking of it as a string that holds your head up like that, so it's connected with the Tai Chi.
So
with the
start
practice.
connecting that in more.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Do you want to continue, Sally?
Well, you can go ahead.
Okay.
I'll do the Kundalini.
Okay.
Part.
Now this is step 5. So it's like each step builds on the last one. Okay. Step 5. This step consists in learning how to transmute cosmic energy regarded as breath into subtle energy. Suppose there is an ebb and flow between the light field and the energy, say, of the gravitational and magnetic fields of the universe. Take, for example, electromagnetic energy. It could be high voltage, low voltage, or low voltage, high wattage. But transmuting the energy would consist in stepping up the voltage called intensity. Excuse me. In terms of our common parlance, it is shifting from a life-giving force, as evidenced by example by the green fingers of a horticulturist, a gardener, into becoming pure spirit, as some holy beings have demonstrated. To bring autonomic and subconscious functions under conscious control, one pulls the energy from the lateral channels into the central one and dissolves them into it. This is effected thus, so that when you get that crisscross of the chakras, it's actually dissolving and something's happening within the chakra. So that's how it flowers, it opens up. Okay, so here it is. You can do this as I speak. Okay, and you might do this by using your hands in this way. Put your thumb under your chin, the index finger above your chin like this, the third finger on the right nostril. Then take your left hand, the thumb would close off the left nostril, and these fingers would close off the right, okay? So, I can't do it and read at the same time, so you'll just have to do it by yourself. So, first of all, give yourself a good exhalation. Okay. Now, inhale through the left nostril, concentrating on the flow of energy upwards through the left channel. Hold the breath, turn the eyeballs upwards, tongue curled upwards, and exhale through the right nostril, sending the energy downwards through the right channel. Now the opposite. Now breathe through, breathe in the right nostril. Good. Hold the breath and exhale through the left. All right. Now breathe through both nostrils, threading the energy up through the central channel. Hold the breath. Now back down through both lateral channels. Okay? Now up through the central channel. And finally down through the central channel. So while you hold your breath, concentrate on an inverted space within the solar plexus. So we're going to stop a moment and do that again. So I want to make sure the instructions are clear, so I'm going to read it all over again, and if you don't have your question, you didn't hear it, just interrupt me and say again, what is that? So maybe I'll just describe it first in my own words. So you're going to the first, okay, I'll do it, that's it. So you're inhaling through the left nostril, and you're concentrating through the end, upwards through the left channel. You hold the breath, don't do it, just listen. Turn the eyeballs upwards, tongue curled upwards, and exhale through the right nostril, sending the energy downwards through the right channel. So you have the 3 channels, okay? Now the opposite. You breathe in the right channel, hold the breath, turning the eyeballs upward and the tongue curled upwards, and then down through the left channel. So you're moving your hands back and forth, okay? Now, then you do it twice through both nostrils. Now breathe through both nostrils, threading the energy up through both lateral channels. Now,
Oh, through the central channel.
no, wait. Now breathe through both nostrils, threading the energy up through the central channel. Hold the breath. Now back down through both lateral channels. Okay. Then it changes a bit. Now up through the central channel. Okay. Finally down through the central channel. And while you hold your breath, you concentrate on an inverted space within the solar plexus. And the solar plexus, of course, is right in here. It's that tender spot where you feel all that emotion, you know. Right.
I have a question.
Yes.
I had a question about that the
Yes.
first time I read it. Is if I'm focusing here when I'm holding my breath, am I still turning my eyes up and
Yeah.
touching my
Yes.
tongue? To
Yes. Yeah. So it's four breaths. Okay. So it's in the left, out, hold, in, out the right. In the right, hold, out the left. In, okay. And then you're going up, let me get it right here. Both nostrils, threading the energy through the central channel, okay. Hold the breath, and then it goes back down through both sides, the lateral channels. Fourth breath goes up the central channel and back down through the central channel. So it's a little confusing, you know. So does anybody need any reiteration of that? It's okay if you do.
There wasn't a breath that went out up the lateral channels and down to
No.
the central?
No.
Okay.
You'll get that later.
Okay.
I mean,
there's another time when I
you
thought,
know, it's like it all
Right.
shifts. It's like that's why I even remember hearing this and I think, well, what is he giving these instructions?
know.
They're not what I'm used to. It's like crazy, you know. But we just play, you know. In other words, he played with this a lot.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of room for
yeah, it's almost like it's a way, but there is no
Yeah.
the way,
yes,
right?
yes.
Is that right?
That's right. So, okay, and all right. Are you?
I'm fine.
You ready to do it again once more? Okay. Now, I don't know if I may read it as we go, but
Just let people do it.
just do it then.
Right.
I'll give you time. I'll do it with you without reading it. Okay.
Okay. All right. I want to say just something that's not in here. This word about inverted space that he's scattered through this explanation. What do you think that is? Someone venture.
I experience it as the void.
The void. Okay.
I love it.
Okay.
And it's almost like the universe, instead of being out there, is in here.
Okay. That's actually pretty close to it. Imagine this space. It actually comes up in science fiction books from time to time. Inverted space. It's a theory in physics that the inside is bigger than the outside. So we have an outside that we observe and experience, understand, feel, move within. But when you turn inside into inverted space, it becomes much more than the observable universe that you normally deal with every day. Right? Make sense to everybody? Anyone have a question about that? Okay, it's an important point. Now we're going to get to the next level of this chakra practice. I'm going to read through this and then I'm going to walk you through it, because people get like, what did you say? But, okay, consider the streams within the life field that swirl upwards like intertwining spiral staircases. Like the double helix of the DNA or the caduceus of the
Asclepius.
How did I say that? Asclepius and Hermes. As you inhale through the left nostril, the energy spirals upward from the bottom of the spine clockwise. Hold the breath, and as you exhale, it spirals downward from the crown center, also clockwise. Then the converse. And finally, concentrate on both spirals as you inhale through both nostrils. Hold, concentrate on both spirals as you exhale. Okay. Now, take your hands, make a fist with your thumbs up. When you're inhaling in the left nostril and out the right nostril, it goes like this, up the spine. When you're inhaling in the left nostril and out the or in the right nostril and out the left nostril, it goes like this, up and down the spine. Okay? That's the simplest way to think about it.
That confused me. I'm going to forget that part.
It's like, you can do it a different way if you like. It's like your hand curves this way.
Okay.
So you know if you breathe in the left nostril, it's going to go clockwise.
Okay.
If you breathe in the right nostril, the curve is this way.
It's going to go
It's gonna go
counterclockwise.
yeah.
Okay?
Makes sense.
Everybody got that?
So if you're breathing in the right nostril, you're going counterclockwise.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
out
this
the
will
left,
go-
you're also going
and-
counterclockwise.
But I thought the left nostril was clockwise.
Only when you're inhaling.
Only when you're inhaling.
It's the
So it's the same
When you
direction.
exhale
It's the same direction. Yeah.
is counterclockwise.
When
the
you're
left?
when you've inhaled in the right, you're exhaling out the left, it's also counterclockwise.
Gotcha.
So if you inhale the left and exhale the left, it's
Clockwise.
clockwise and then counterclockwise exhale?
No.
Let's listen to me again. When you inhale in the left nostril, the energy comes from the base of your spine clockwise,
Right.
touching each chakra as it proceeds up. Give a little touch on each one, gets to the top. And then you exhale out the right nostril, and then you hold up there and feel really good, right? And then you exhale out the right nostril, it's also clockwise,
Okay, the right nostril.
coming down.
Okay.
And then when you inhale in the right nostril, it's counterclockwise, because see that's where your hands are.
Right.
When you exhale out the left nostril, it's still counterclockwise, going down.
Will it explode if I do it wrong?
I don't know. We'll just have to watch and see. Please don't be messy.
Clean up your eyeballs.
Okay? Okay, so you ready to try this? You know? And admittedly, this is the first time I've ever done this. It can be confusing. It took me a while to get it, and I've been working on it for 30 years, so it's something I do almost every morning. So
Do you?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool
Yeah.
when you get used to it,
Yeah.
because you're really feeling all of that stuff. Now, I forgot the most important part. When you're inhaling in both nostrils, guess what happens? See?
Yeah, I
Then you're in the double helix. First time, just one side of the helix. One side of the helix.
Yeah.
Second time, one side of the helix, one side of the helix.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it in both nostrils,
Yeah.
the double helix is in effect.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, and then it goes down also the double helix,
Right.
but he obviously gave the fourth one. It's up the lateral channels and then down through the central channel.
Oh, right. Then that gets even more.
Yeah.
But we won't go. Let's just keep it simple for the time being.
Simple, yeah.
Okay? So let's try it. And just take your time. There's no particular time limit. Generally, let's try it this. Can you count?
The count, yeah.
Well, counting is hard when you're trying to concentrate on this rotating thingy. So let's just do the breathing as you feel comfortable. How's that? Okay? All right, so let's go ahead. Okay, there's more. Obviously, this is a progressive experience that you gradually work on day by day. Giving a little attention every day to this practice. And then we get to a more advanced stage, which I'm going to read to you. You don't necessarily have to try this, but you can if you want. Now, you could gradually shift your attention to the central channel while being aware of the spirals. As previously, one converges the energy into the central channel and dissolves it there. And what is more, into the solar plexus. You willfully pull the energy from the lateral channels into the central one and dissolve from there. To do this, as you breathe in, draw the energy from both ends, the top of the head and the bottom of the spine, into the solar plexus by constricting the muscles of the abdomen while visualizing that all the currents of energy from the top of the body flow downwards through the two lateral channels. All these currents, both lateral from above and below, now gather in the solar plexus. So let's try that. See how that feels. You're going to take just one very gentle inhale and draw the energy from the top of the head and the root chakra down and up the lateral channels to converge in the central channel in the solar plexus. Just one breath. you exhale, radiate from the solar plexus. This, by the way, is an excellent balancing breath. If you feel out of balance, you feel out of sorts, you feel angry, whatever, do this breath a couple of times and you'll feel much better. Okay? And everything calms you down. Okay. Good place to break?
Sure.
Yeah, that's enough for now. So we'll take a
All right.
break or
All right.
what?
I'd just like to say something. I'd like you to come on time, because when you come late, you miss the whole sections of the paper. And, so please come on time. When Murshid held his meetings, he locked the door at a certain point, so that no one was allowed in after that point, when the time he said to convene. So please think about that, and please come on time. I know that a lot of you come from far distant places, and it may be difficult, but please have that consideration for the other people here.
Okay, let's do evening prayers. Most
Gracious Lord, Master, Messiah, and Savior of humanity, we greet Thee with all humility. Thou art the first cause and the last effect, the divine light and the spirit of guidance, Alpha and Omega. Thy light is in all forms, Thy love in all beings, in a loving mother, in a kind father, in an innocent child, in a helpful friend, in an inspiring teacher. Allow us to recognize Thee in all Thy holy names and forms, as Rama, as Krishna, as Shiva, as Buddha. Let us know Thee as Abraham, as Solomon, as Zarathustra, as Moses, as Jesus, as Mohammed, and in many other names and forms, known and unknown to the world. We adore Thy past, Thy presence deeply enlightens our being, and we look for Thy blessings in the future. O Messenger, Christ, Nabi, the Rasul of God, Thou whose heart constantly reaches upward, Thou comest on earth with a message, as a dove from above when Dharma decays, and speakest the word that is put into Thy mouth, as the light filleth the crescent moon. May the star of the divine light shining in Thy heart be reflected in the hearts of Thy devotees. May the message of God reach far and wide, illuminating and making the whole of humanity as one single family in the parenthood of God. Pour upon us Thy love and Thy light. 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 A torch in the darkness, a staff during my weakness, a rock in the weariness of life. Thou, my Master, makest earth a paradise. Thy thought giveth me unearthly joy. Thy light illuminateth my life's path. Thy words inspire me with divine wisdom. I follow in Thy footsteps, which lead me to the eternal goal. comforter of the brokenhearted, supporter of those in need, friend of the lovers of truth, blessed Master, thou art the prophet of God. Okay. Okay. So we're going to continue with the. Let me ask you first. What do you think we're doing? What is this? What does this work do?
It refines our spiritual body and our connection to the vibration in the planet, but the stars and the air and the life all around us, as well as deepens our internal life.
Okay. Anything else?
I think we're remembering our responsibilities.
All right. What else? This isn't just exercise. There's a purpose to this. There's a reason.
Discovering who we really are.
Okay. We don't do this just to torture your brains.
Didn't feel like torture to me.
Huh? Felt okay?
Ah, yeah.
All right. Okay, well, the next lessons let's see if you have a different answer by the time we get through the next hour or so. And it's important that you're not be told that you get it. I can tell you and tell you and tell you and tell you, but that's not the same as you. Oh, now I see. Right? I mean, that's seems to be one of the cardinal rules of this work, that you either read it or hear it 10 times, 50 times, 100 times, 200 times, and then all of a sudden you hear it.
Oh.
Yeah.
You hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know what they mean.
Yeah. And then you find out that there was more.
Yeah, as soon as you think you know it, you can start
Oh,
to
yeah.
learn it.
Yeah. It's like Tai Chi. You spend a year or so learning the form, and then you start to learn Tai Chi, and that'll take you another 2 or 3 or 4 decades. So that works. I was actually I had a client here who knew martial arts, right? And we were talking about it, and he said, I said, but I've always heard that Tai Chi is the most effective. And he says, yeah, but it takes too long. Oh, I see. The Western point of view. Give me a pill.
Oh, what?
Yeah, right? Okay. Our objective, ready, is to transmute the grosser energy of the life field into subtler energy. Think of your life field as a vortex, like a whirlpool. In the place of your skin, you are surrounded by a rainbow. At the center is a vacuum. Concentration on the solar plexus will increase the incandescence of the emanation body. The flaring up of the flame will suck gross matter into a vacuum, thereby transmutation is operating at the core of your being. Okay, let's just go over that a little bit. So, what you do is just see how that feels for you. And however, again, whatever your experience is, that's your experience. I can tell you, but I can't monitor your experience. So whatever you feel is what you feel. And sometimes, so don't doubt your feeling, all right? Accept your feeling for what it is. If there's nothing, there's nothing, and that's okay too. So what you want to do is imagine or think about what you see as your skin, your boundary of your body, as really a rainbow type of emanation of energy. Because surely you know that your body is always giving off photons. So you can just imagine that, this rainbow surrounding you, and at the center of this constantly whirling rainbow of energy is a vortex, a vacuum, right in the middle, corresponding to the solar plexus. Just see how that feels. And then as you concentrate on the solar plexus while being at the same time aware of the vortex, the whirling around you of this rainbow of energy, as you concentrate on the solar plexus, you're going to increase the incandescence, the luminous quality of the solar plexus. Even though it's a vacuum, there's energy there which is radiating and feeding the rainbow. As that happens, you might notice that the grosser energy of your being, what we ordinarily identify as who we are, our physicality, begins to get sucked into this vacuum and is transmuted via this process of burning, really, into a much, much finer, more subtle energy. And if you continue this practice, you may notice, I'm not saying you should, but you might notice that this rainbow surrounding you, the vortex, the tornado, has no boundaries. It just continues. Although obviously the greater part of it is centered around the core of your being, the solar plexus. Okay. Amen. Now, does that at all change how you're feeling about what you're doing? Makes a difference, doesn't it? Yeah. What's the change?
Just in perspective on my living being,
Mm-hmm.
and state of being that I'm used to thinking about it and how I think about it.
Okay. So this can be something that you do as just part of your normal daily meditation. Tap into this one. Very simple, really. And the trick with any of these kinds of concentrations is to remember to continually renew it, so it doesn't become rote, just something like the same danger as when you say a prayer over and over and over and over and over. Like we've been saying these prayers for 35 years, and sometimes you just can't. It just comes out of your mouth, and you don't even.
Right. It's like you're driving home.
Yeah, exactly.
No, worker.
Right. Prayer hypnosis.
Yeah.
Oh. This is so interesting to me. If you ask what it does here, and it's transformative in a way that has nothing to do with muhasabah or examination of conscience or your psychological makeup and thinking about it. Nothing to do with that. It's totally beyond that. Of this transformation kind of thing. It's like it's nothing that you do.
Thinking not required.
Thinking not required, exactly.
It's experiential, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
I think it's the beauty of it.
You have more to tell us.
Yeah, of course. Look how big this book is.
For now.
We're on lesson 11. There's
The next
35 lessons to go.
the next paragraph.
Yes, right. Okay, here we go. As a continuation, get back in that space. You just drop right back into it. Don't even think about it, just do it. Into the space with concentrating on the solar plexus. The vortex all around you, circling around you, generally rotates clockwise, right?
Oh.
That's but if yours rotates counterclockwise, it's okay with me. Sometimes with left-handed people, it rotates counterclockwise. Generally clockwise. Okay. Now, visualize the contents of the body melting into light and gradually disappearing into emptiness. Concentration on the heart center will increase the radiance of your aura. Remember what I said? What's coming from this incandescence in the solar plexus is radiating into this rainbow vortex and causing it to feeding it, causing it to become brighter. Now you're concentrating on the heart, and that will increase the radiance further. Now, concentration on the throat center will open up the world of creative imagination. The world is therefore, will open up the world of creative imagination, the world of metaphor. All right? This is the place where we are able to describe to ourselves and to others via the metaphors that we adopt. This is the Maya world, the world of illusion, but we've talked about this a lot. The world out of which we derive our enjoyment, the pleasure of living. Maybe an illusion, but it's fun. It is therefore the center of the enjoyment body as opposed to the emanation body centered in the heart. So the center of the enjoyment body is the throat chakra. Okay? Whereas in the crown center, the clear light of bliss is attained in what is called the body of truth, experienced in, though mostly not relegated to, the conscious mind in deep sleep. If you visualize, and we'll get into the body of truth a little later. If you visualize an inverted space in the vacuole of your solar plexus, the vacuum of your solar plexus, and shift your sense of identity to being pure spirit, this will have an immediate effect on the energy of the light field. So see how that works for you. See just how that feels, or if you can initiate that. And again, it's not about thinking, it's about doing. So visualize an inverted space. Remember, inverted space is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. In the vacuum of your solar plexus, shift your sense of identity to being pure spirit, and this will have an immediate effect on the energy of the light field. Now, this may be something you can do for an extended period. It may only happen for a nanosecond, and that's okay too. But you'll feel something. Okay, next step. Concentrate on each chakra in turn. I'm just going to read this and then we'll ask you to do it. Visualizing it as a vortex with a vacuum at the center. As you inhale, consciously make the breath more subtle. In the end, your breath will shift from the gross kind to being a sheer whisper, as a light zephyr upon a cool lake. So do that with each chakra from the bottom up. Just blowing across the vacuum at the center of each chakra. Okay. You may now become aware of your etheric or subtle body as floating gently around and above the gross physical body. And you might see it as the mold in which the physical body was formed or is continually recast. You might also call that the template of your being. You may become aware of that. Okay, incidentally, this practice will rejuvenate your physical body, thereby healing it. So you notice that there's several steps to this particular practice. Okay, how do you feel now? Madam Alima?
I'm feeling much more spacious and quieter.
That's good word. So what do you suppose that does to your whole being? To recognize that state within yourself?
things going on. So, part of me is feeling very comforted by it, and part of me is a little afraid of it.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Perhaps because it's new and not like connected to this everyday living world.
It is connected to the everyday living world
But
because
the
you're doing
mind
it.
doesn't believe it.
Right. Yeah, the thing about these kinds of practices is when they really happen to you and you begin to actually feel these shifts in energy and access these various energies that are floating around you. They're there all the time. It's not like they go anywhere. All you're doing is touching into something which has always been there. But your mind isn't used to taking it into consideration as a factor. Okay? And so that's part of the anticipation and what's the word I want? Well, the fear, I suppose. Anxiety, perhaps, that you might experience. Anyone else? Not so chatty anymore? Until calm down?
Can I excuse for a minute?
What struck me is that one of the last sentences he said about at this point you begin to heal. You know?
Right.
So that was struck me. You know, it's like, oh, so when real healers get to this point,
I think they would have to.
yeah,
Of really understanding these very subtle energies.
yeah,
And then to the point of being able to manipulate them in other people who are not aware of them, rather than teaching that person, because that's a much more complex process. And the person has to be open to that teaching, other than just, fix me. Right?
Could I say something?
Sure.
That first exercise, I felt quiet.
Which first exercise? That we did just now?
No, the one right after lunch.
Okay.
I felt quiet and peaceful.
Uh-huh.
The second one, I felt the tornado going to the top of my head, down to my feet. And this last one, I felt frustrated because I felt there was a block there.
Quite possibly. So then what would you do?
I try not to overthink it.
You just work on it.
Okay,
Yeah, just keep doing it.
all right.
These are all very ancient practices that have been worked out over centuries, right? They work.
and Moshe did say by constant practice and intense practice, you get it. You know, it's like so. It's not a one day kind of thing.
2 days, maybe.
No.
There's a key to any of this work, and it's the key is in 3 words: discipline. Deciding I'm going to do this, right? I'm just going to push through and keep doing it. Courage, the courage to push on your beliefs, your assumptions, your opinions, who you think you are, allowing that to actually grow and expand. Because it's much easier to stay small, right? To get big, who knows what's going to happen. And the third one is patience. That's perhaps the most important. To be patient with yourself and patient with the universe that takes a little time to catch up when you begin to shift. What?
Say this to me again.
How many times have you heard me say this?
I played off someplace. Well, back to the practice.
Discipline, courage, and patience.
Okay.
Those are the 3 requirements to do this work. Okay. Any questions at this point? No? Now it gets complicated. This is just the preliminaries.
Oh, this is lesson 2?
This is lesson 2, and lesson 2, yeah, the lesson 12 actually in the list. Okay. The Tibetans discriminate between the gross mind that processes sensory impressions from the existential level of reality, from a subtle mind which grasps metaphor, and a very subtle mind which grasps truth. Okay, and this is the way it's going to be throughout this lesson. The gross mind, the subtle mind, and the very subtle mind. All right? Now, by concentrating on the void created by burning the inner fire, culminating in the indestructible drop in the heart chakra, the life field, or the winds, will become sublimated and eventually dissolve in the eye of the vortex, as it were. And as a consequence, the subtler mind will take over from the gross mind. Okay? You get all that? You still concentrating? Paying attention?
Watching that guy walk his dog.
There'll be a test. I'm going to read it again.
Okay.
By concentrating on, and this is just what we just did, okay? By concentrating on the void created, and then this is just Pir Vilayat talking about it, and this is Pir Vilayat-isms. By concentrating on the void created by burning the inner fire, culminating in the indestructible drop in the heart chakra. Remember that little drop, the drop of amber essence dripping from the heart chakra?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what, I'm not even going to talk about it. Okay, the life field will become sublimated and eventually dissolve in the eye of the vortex. And as a consequence, the subtler mind will take over from the gross mind. Okay? In other words, you go from being Luke to being Master Yoda. All right? Does that make sense? You're actually enabling yourself to become who you are. Use the force, Luke. Uh-oh.
The giggles are coming.
The giggles coming. Okay. Now this is what truly happens when you go deep into these practices. Generally, on a long retreat, it'll happen. Just because you're doing the sun stuff over and over, day after day. Breathing will become weaker and weaker and will eventually disappear completely. Perhaps you will resume breathing after 5 or 6 minutes. Sometimes longer. You're going into a state of hibernation, you might say. It's what animals go into when they hibernate during the winter. If they this is well known. They might have one breath every 10 minutes, because their body is slowed down so immensely. And human beings have the same capacity, and this is what you're tapping into. The signs that this has actually happened are described as follows. But remember that each of these mental formations are only appearances. In other words, just a way to talk about it. That is, they belong to the sphere of metaphor, and therefore may be made to disappear and be replaced by the next one. Each is associated with an element. Here are the signs. Earth is the mirage or shimmering effect. Ever experienced that? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the first sign that you're tapping into something beyond the physical emanation. Next is water, which is smoke, thin wisps of wafting blue smoke drifting in the air in a slowly swirling haze. Next is fire, which is fireflies, a crackling fire, or fireworks, which you may visualize. I was just with him, you read. It was, he sees this, and he didn't know what it was, and that's what it is. Right? Air is somewhat like the appearance of a flame in a draughtless room. In other words, it will be just there, a flame. It's not lifting, it's not moving, it's like might be a ball of fire that you would experience. Okay, this sequence is paralleled by images produced by the subtle mind. Remember, we have the gross mind, the subtle mind, and the very subtle. This is the subtle mind. The first one is a vision of whiteness described as an empty lake on a clear autumn night, pervaded by the bright light of the full moon. You know another metaphor? Or other ones? This is only one. White light experience. Right? You've had a white light experience. We just dissolve into white light. You ever had that experience? There's all around you is nothing but light.
Right, but it can be, there's no lights.
No, there's no point sources. You're just in there. You're just in it. It happens when with hypnosis clients. It happens all the time. Very common. Next is.
It doesn't always happen as a result of like doing a practice.
No, it might just be there. Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
thing, is that some of these things are things that you recognize, but now we're associating them with something that's laid out. But you may have experienced these things without even realizing they're really cool. And the Tibetans work hard to make it happen, and here you're just doing it. Okay. The mind of red increase, which is an empty sky pervaded by sunlight. Now the next one's an important one. The mind of black near attainment, described as a black empty sky. At this stage, one can clearly distinguish between the loss of thought formations and memory of the gross mind and the emergence of the subtle mind, together with the corresponding memory of a level of reality one was not previously aware of. The consequence will be that you will seem to have fallen into a swoon and will appear to others, to all intents and purposes, as dead. Because you stop breathing. Right? That's fana. Fana in Sufism is the word for the annihilation. When you step out of all of this and you're just in the void, with no sense of anything other than the void. That's fun. Okay? Next, with the re-emergence of the subtle mind, the clear light appears. Remember the clear light of bliss from the crown chakra? Mark that the degree of brightness witnessed is proportionate to the density and duration of the prior darkness.
Say that sentence, please.
Okay.
Repeat.
With the re-emergence of when you go into the black, the mind disappears. There is no gross mind, subtle mind, or very subtle mind. You're just there. Okay? And you stay there for whatever duration happens. And then when you re-emerge, baka, rebirth, with the re-emergence of the subtle mind, the clear light appears. And note that the degree of brightness witnessed is proportionate to the density and duration of the prior darkness. Okay, now this is something that you may or may not have experienced it's a reality that is very common to all mystical paths. We just call it different stuff. And it's good to know that it exists so that when it does appear, you'll at least have some clue. Because it's scary as hell, frankly. You know, when everything disappears, it's pretty
Shocking.
yeah, shocking's a good word. Thank you.
But doesn't the shock even disappear?
The shock disappears. It's like the shock. Interestingly enough, the shock appears just before you enter into this state. It's like your body, your mind, your emotions know something weird's going to happen, right? And then, because of your courage, you push through, go into this state, and then there's no fear because you push through it. The fear is always prior to the experience, right? It's like being afraid. You know, say you're 30 feet in the air and you got to walk across a bridge that's only 10 inches wide. You can do it. I mean, it's not a problem. If it was on the ground, no problem at all, right? 30 feet in the air, it's a whole different ballgame. Mm-hmm. Same bridge. See my point? You can do it, obviously. I've done it. Oh, I was a carpenter for how many years? And, I could easily walk on a 2x4 that's laying on the ground. Walk on a 2x4 that's 2 stories in the air. That's a whole different thing. But you just do it. Okay? It's exactly the same. That courage to recognize that you can do what is very natural to you, despite the confusion in your mind at this new experience. Next stage. At this stage, the subtle mind itself disappears, releasing the very subtle mind, and it is this very subtle mind which is carried over in the dying process. You lose the memory of emptiness. You will have the exact experience that you would have if you were dying. And this is an extremely desirable experience. Do you know why?
So you're ready when you die.
That a girl. That's it exactly.
What did you say?
This is
So you're ready when you die.
yeah. Very handy. Okay. It's going to happen to all of us. Wouldn't it be nice to be prepared?
Yeah.
To know exactly what to do?
Die before death.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Tibetans, this is an interesting statement that he says, the Tibetans are privy to preparing the transit into death by anticipating it while still alive in order to forestall resurrection. What do you suppose he means by that?
Listen,
I don't understand.
amongst people who believe in reincarnation, isn't the ultimate goal to stop the cycle and stop being reincarnated?
Yeah. Although, for some, you continue in any case because that's your job.
Right. They choose to come back as a service.
Right.
But is that what they mean?
I believe so. I'm not sure, actually. I just, there's no explanation. It's just, that's what I'm saying. Right?
Call
I'll ask you next time we're talking. Okay. How are we doing so far? Okay, you all right?
Yeah. This is something that some part of me has been pondering just this in the last, I don't know,
10 or 15 years?
no, a little less than that. But I actually spoke about it to Berte, and said something about that. And she said, "Okay, we'll talk about that next time. We're gonna have me for breakfast." And
Oh, okay.
and tell her that well,
Now you have all the answers. You can impress
well, I can add to the conversation a speck.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is a different kind of experience than out of body experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very different.
This is controlled.
We can control your out of body too.
Yeah.
Most people that I know that do it don't. It
No.
just happens to them.
Well, a lot
I
of
mean,
people
you can
control it.
initiate it, you know, you can learn how to do it, but most people that I know that actually do a lot of astral travel, they just do it. It's not something that they,
But this is going a lot far different.
this,
This
yeah,
is far different.
yeah. This is,
Well-
this is beginning, this is controlling all of those layers of being that exist.
It's more and more appealing the older I get. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm not dead yet. So
Still, it doesn't hurt to have the skill, does it?
right.
So would it be fair to say that this process will happen, and what one can do is be prepared to recognize it? It will happen whether you're prepared or not.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're gonna die.
But I mean this process through the dying.
Ah,
And
good
so
question.
if you don't recognize it, you'll be in terror or you'll be in whatever. Otherwise, why would we prepare, I guess is the question.
Mm.
So that
I
we
think-
can recognize it.
Well,
My response to that would have to be, no, this isn't what happens if you're not prepared.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's my thought. Also.
You had the same thought? Yeah, yeah. This method of preparation is very skillful. The other way is there's no skill involved at all.
Yes, an educated death is better than an uneducated death.
with the Tibetans, they had that whole Tibetan Book of the Dead where they're reading, you know, the priest is there and he's reading everything as the person is dying and guiding them through what to expect on this journey into what they say their journey is.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't they continue to read after the person has passed?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because only the body is dead. There's still stuff going on.
Yeah.
Okay, summing up. One arouses the winds, one enhances the energy flow converging from the universe, also the emergent energy accessed through the solar plexus. In addition, the energy rises upward and downward in the internal pathways from chakra to chakra. Okay? Get all that?
No, say it again.
Okay, here we go. One enhances the energy flow converging from the universe, also the emergent energy accessed through the solar plexus. What is that? Anybody know?
That's it. That's an exercise that we.
Yeah, but what is it? It's the white hole.
Yeah.
You get, right? You know, you have this access to celestial energy through the internal aspect of your being. Universal, the cosmic energy comes from without. Celestial energy comes from within. Okay? Think about this is something we've touched on many times.
Okay, so what's the difference between universal energy and celestial energy?
Celestial energy would be the energy of the other universes. Cosmic energy is the energy of this physical universe. The emanation from photons from the suns and the mental experience of archangels and things like that.
And the effect of the vibration of the other planets and
Yes,
the motion
right.
of the stars and stuff like that.
Right, orbital
Yeah.
mechanics. And,
Now, and then the celestial is
the more subtle
Angelic and so on.
that
universes.
sort of the light, the all pervasive
Well,
light?
Here we go. From the top, we have Ahadiyat, which is the one, unity, right? Vadat, which is the expression of consciousness of the one. Vadaniyat, which is the abstract, which is where sound and light begins to emanate from the one. Arwah, which is spiritual energy, that's the angels. Light becomes rays, qualities, archetypes, and the emergence of souls, individuation. begins there.
And is that Ayurvedic? Is that
No, that's the Sufi.
Oh, it's Sufi.
Seven heavenly planes, yeah.
But,
And then us-
But how do we know if it didn't emanate from a Vedic source?
Could have. I mean, there's been a lot of interaction,
Yeah.
over the centuries.
Yeah.
Uh,
Vedic means so much. And
Absolutely,
ancient.
sure. Or a merging of Mazdian and Vedic
Yeah.
sources
Yeah.
that merged into something else. It's hard to say
Right.
these sources. And then after that is Ajsam, which is the astral or Jinn plane,
Uh-huh.
where the genies come from. Plane of genius, mixture of qualities. Souls of earthly beings, the negative or passive state. And then Misal or Mythal, which is the plane of creative intelligence, right? This is where genius exists or emerges. And then Insan or Nasut, which is physical existence. All of that stuff you just described, planets and stars and
okay.
whatnot. Okay, so this is just 7, and other systems have more. Like the Tibetan Buddhists have 9 different planes of existence. Basically the same.
Is that a diagram?
This is a diagram of the.
Oh, okay.
You've probably seen these before.
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
I can make copies of this for you guys if you want it.
Did I hear you say place the angels and archangels in the cosmic?
Sure. Because their mental energy exists here, even though their beings exist in layers of planes.
Well, there's all the different planes of the angelic planes as well.
Then we get into that, which is another way to. Okay, all right. Next.
I don't know. There's a crossover of planes, or is there a direct line? Is there like overlapping?
You want me to give you the answer that Paravalai gave me when I asked the same question?
Yeah.
What he said was they all exist together at the same time, all the time, right here.
Right.
There is no.
So
we have the whole thing with how fine is the energy and be able to cross from one plane to another.
You're not even crossing because you're in it all the time.
You're in it all
Yeah.
the time.
Right.
you're just shifting your awareness.
That's it. The crossing, any crossing you do is you're in your mind or your consciousness.
All right, so it's refining our awareness. That's all. It's
That's
just
all
the
we're doing.
refining of our awareness.
Giving
None
you the
of
skills
this-
to tap into those aspects of reality that we ordinarily are unaware of.
If
Okay.
you want, you can think in terms of Jacob's ladder. Yeah. I mean, it's
You're just
not-
thinking of that
it's
song.
helpful. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Jacob's ladder. In order to
No, I
go up, you
wasn't
gotta
thinking
go
of that
down.
here at all.
Something like that. Okay. Yeah, there is. We need to think. Human beings need to think in terms of verticality, that we're ascending somehow, or we're.
Or somehow, how to gain access.
That's what we're doing.
So, how to gain access is through our personal. I'm going to get back to the word refinement again.
Well, how about your personal?
Awareness.
Try
Attunement.
another word.
Okay.
Your personal intent. Okay, because intent carries you through in all of these exercises. All right?
Which kind of, it's always surprised me how someone who, they just suddenly have this access that I've been trying to reach for a decade. The intention is the same.
How do you know?
I don't know.
That's right.
I'm
You don't
guessing.
know. Yeah, you're assuming.
still very confusing.
That's why I have that library upstairs.
It's still very confusing.
When I say the message, God reach far and wide in the morning, or sometimes I say it other times, but I started to say inside. May the message of God reach far and wide, and then I usually add a couple of inside.
Oh yeah?
Because far and wide, I think of the world and the universe and the, all the troubled areas and people who, are stuck or whatever. But then it's like out, but it's also.
I mean, it feels like it's external to you.
Well, it's
No, it's
may the
coming
message
from
of God
it.
reach far and wide. It's always, sending it out. But then I feel like may the message of God reach far and wide inside.
Yeah.
And then that I guess that includes me, but it goes. I feel
Something internal happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Ready for the next little piece of confusion? Okay. One sublimates the energy of the universe, drawing it into a void or vacuum inside the central channel where the winds subside. This is done now. The point there is that on the two outside channels, there's a lot of action, energy, vibration. But when you get into that very central channel, there's a calmness inside. That's what. Okay. Okay. This is done by endeavoring to move or swirl the energy inwards from the lateral channels into the central channel in the spinal cord through the connecting afferent and efferent links. Here we go again, get out the dictionary. And secondly, by drawing upwards and the upwards and descending currents into the abyss of the solar plexus across the threshold, giving access into the inverted space or vacuum within. Get all that?
In the solar plexus.
In the solar plexus. So, it's a combination of forces that you are enabling. They're there all the time, and you might notice that in people who are in a state of confusion, anxiety, distress, depression, whatever, none of this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's all chaotic. If you tap into their the energy that's flowing up and down them, it'll be jagged. And one of the ways you can help them is by concentrating on it. Yeah, you probably do it all the time. I do it too. I do it in a different way than what Sarah does, but we do essentially the same thing.
Help with their breath.
Breath work is very important, but you're tuning into them, and this is critical. You can't
Impose.
thank you. You can't impose, but you can suggest,
Mm-hmm.
right, in various ways.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways that I suggest is just try this. Imagine. Here's an image that I give a lot. And in a way, it's very similar to what we're doing here, but it's much simpler. And you can use it anytime. Just imagine that you're standing on a beach. And it's a warm summer's day. This is like the externalization. Sun's high in the sky, there's a nice offshore breeze. There's the aroma of the ocean all around you, maybe combined with the aroma of vegetation. And it's high tide, so the ocean, very calm ocean, but nevertheless the waves are coming in, flowing up over the beach, hesitating, and then receding. And it'll happen in a rhythm. The waves will come in over the beach, hesitate for a moment, and then recede. Now, it doesn't matter how many people have walked across this beach and how many footprints have been left. When the ocean comes in and flows over the sand, it's automatically smoothed out, calmed, and all that chaotic impressions in the sand from people walking across the beach is completely erased, just from this very smooth, natural action of the ocean over the beach. So in the very same way, what you can do is you can imagine a very gentle wave of energy flowing from the top of your head down to your toes with each breath. So that every time you inhale and exhale, there's this soft, gentle wave of energy flowing through your body, smoothing out, erasing the chaos of the moment, relaxing all the tense muscles, releasing any tension or anxiety maybe lurking, and flushing out the various negative energies we all accumulate. Very simple, gentle, easy practice that you can do anytime as a precursor to going into these more complex practices. In fact, I recommend that you do something like this anytime you sit down to meditate. See how it feels? So quick and easy. Calms you right down. I probably do it 100 times a day. Something similar. Maybe more. I don't know. And this all by itself will begin to alter your attitude because you're continually relaxing yourself. Whereas the world demands that you become tense and ready to retaliate, right? Because who knows what's going to happen. But you don't have to do that. You know, rather than practicing Taekwondo and fighting back, step out of the way. You know, step aside. Okay? Now I'll read this again. One sublimates the energy of the universe, drawing it into the void or vacuum inside, and that's just exactly what I just did with this little exercise. Right? Just kind of calmed everything down. The void of the central channel where the winds subside. Everything becomes very gentle. This is done by endeavoring to move the energy inwards from the lateral channels into the central channel of the spinal column and through the connecting afferent and efferent links. And secondly, by drawing upwards and descending currents into the abyss of the solar plexus across the threshold, giving access into the inverted space of the vacuum within. Does it feel nice? See? And see how simple that is? I mean, there's a lot going on there, but once you get used to it, you know, it's like anything, you know, like learning language. You know, when you're first a little kid and you're trying to figure out how to communicate, it's really annoying. That's where the terrible twos come from, because they can't communicate, right? But as you learn to communicate, it becomes a little easier to get your point across. And in the same way, this practice seems very complex at the beginning, but as you do it and practice it, then it becomes automatic and natural. And you can move on to more complex things. All right? Ma'am.
So, you spoke earlier about the fact that the different planes concur.
Yes.
So I've been struggling with, because I'm a very visual person, so I get visualizations. I can do the visualizations of the chimney and the caduceus and the wheels and all of that, and I can do the visualization of inverted space. I'm struggling with imposing the two together, seeing how the two fit. So it occurs to me that they're simply concurrent levels. So it's not like I have to construct that visual in my head of the inverted space and the chimney coming out of it. It's just overlaid
In a way, it's all metaphor. Remember,
Yeah.
every bit of this is metaphor. Even though the movement of energy in the subtle body is
It's
exactly as
measurable.
described. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you see it, you ever seen it? Yeah. Okay. So you see it. So there's rotation. I mean, you might see, for instance, the energy coming out of your chakras has a rotation this way, and sometimes you can see it or feel it. Yeah, the trick is that you don't superimpose one onto the other. They just exist. Depends on what you're looking at. Okay? Does that make sense? You know how Pure Life says to toggle between unity and individuality, right? In a way, it's the same. Whatever it is you're paying attention to is what.
That's the way you see it.
Yeah. Okay? Make sense?
Did he also said unity and diversity? Or is that
Yeah.
something totally different?
No, it's the same.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the principle of what I've always used. What the unity,
See, I'm just having it in my mind. I was trying to pick,
the
because
existence
I'm
of
very
unity, yeah.
structural in my visualizations. I couldn't
Okay.
put that in. Then I know it's because it's
Here we go. There's more.
and I'm cool.
How are we
Yeah.
doing time-wise? Okay. As one sublimates energy in this wise, one becomes aware of the flow of energy in the subtle body, which one now identifies with, which is what we're doing, right? You can even probably feel it. This energy that's in various ways, whatever your tendencies are going to be. The immediate consequence is that the subtle mind takes over from the gross mind. Now remember that the gross mind is preoccupied with interpreting perceptions of the gross physical world. Okay? Important to remember. Whereas, what are you laughing at?
I don't know.
Something bounced in your head.
No, I
It
just
tickled
thinking.
tickled your brain.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking I just fall asleep. To like it's so soothing, all of it. I mean, you're not boring me. It's just
Oh, that's good to know.
so relaxed.
Wait, so you mean you're relaxed?
Okay. All right, let's just go ahead and keep that subtle mind alert. Where are we at? Okay, remember that the gross mind is preoccupied with interpreting perceptions of the gross physical world, which you need, right? If a car is heading for you and you're in the middle of the street, you should probably move. That's the perception of the gross physical world. Okay, that's what it's for. Whereas the subtle mind computes the world of metaphor in which one's self-image is fashioned.
That is definitely pure life.
Yep. You get that? The subtle mind computes the world of metaphor in which one's self-image is fashioned. Do you see why that is?
Computes the what metaphor?
The world of metaphor.
The world of metaphor to create its image.
Yeah. Computes the world of metaphor in which the self-image is created.
I just think it's so real.
That our self-image is created within the world of metaphor.
Yeah. In which self-image is fashioned. I guess same
Yeah.
word.
All right. Yeah.
Okay?
Just trying to grasp
In other words, your self-image is not a product of the physical universe. Your self-image is a product of your obsessions and observations and other various aspects of mental energy, right? And there's a very simple way to see this. An obese person will not know they're obese.
Sometimes.
They sometimes know, but more often than not, their self-image is skinny. I'm telling it from the point of view of a professional. I deal with this all the time.
And see
Yeah,
people who have a self-image of being fat.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. The self-image, so it has nothing to do with physical reality.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm a loser. I'm a winner. Whatever it may be. You know, your self-image is a product of metaphors, not a product of physical reality.
No.
Okay, makes sense.
It's almost constructed in in response to physical reality.
Well, it has aspects that are part of physical reality, sure, but more often than not, it's constructed via information that you have been given, which you accept.
You believe.
Yeah.
Belief systems.
God, you're stupid. Over and over, when you're 4 years old, eventually you're going to believe it, right? Even though your IQ might be 180. Okay, where are we at? Okay, at this point, one realizes the extent of the scope of incentive one enjoys in convectioning one's self-image the way one wishes, since it is the product of one's imagining faculty. In other words, you can change it. Okay, you can decide that the metaphors that you want to accept are quite different from the metaphors you were taught, which is what we do, really.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's exactly what we do.
And then question them.
Yeah, and then you keep on exactly, because then you accept a new set of metaphors, but hopefully your intelligence will tell you that these are just temporary, right? Convectioning, what a word.
God bless them.
Oh, yeah.
Albeit that one needs to take into account the way that the harmony of the universe. Oh, I love this one. This is what I said to you last night. Just tickled my brain. One needs to take into account the way that the harmony of the universe gets fluctuated in one's idiosyncrasies, like variation on a theme.
Amazing. Well, that's Mozart.
It's art, isn't it?
It's Mozart.
Oh, it's Mozart, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brings it right on in.
Yeah. He had
Music and vibration and the the.
Okay, do I need to write that again?
Mm-hmm.
One needs to take into account the way that the harmony of the universe gets fluctuated in one's idiosyncrasies. Okay? Which says what?
We create our own reality to a certain extent.
And when you're observing someone else?
We filter what we see.
Well, quite not what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay.
They are what they are.
They are what they are.
Yeah. Their idiosyncrasies have fluctuated the universe's intent to be harmonious.
Watch out for butterflies.
That's very funny.
Okay.
You have a comedian sense of humor sometimes.
But it's very helpful to think this way. The universe is harmonious. That's its job. It's what it does. Except I don't know. Sometimes I wonder some of these NASA photos I see, like intersecting galaxies and things.
And how
That's just the
photographs too.
film's
Yeah.
interpretation of what's really out there.
Yeah. Who knows? But when just by observing yourself and observing others, recognize that your own idiosyncrasies are modifying the universe's need to be harmonious.
Modifying it or
Yeah, of course.
Expressing.
Yeah. In other words, you get to decide how to express it. Your idiosyncrasies, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
We all have them. There's no such thing as a person who can be absolutely. This is who he is, and these are all of his things.
Teeny variations.
Yeah. Just even the very same piece of music played by two different exquisite pianists is going to be different, right? Same piece of music.
Mm-hmm. And that's their
Idiosyncrasy.
ability to modify the
That's
frequency of the
That fluctuate the intent of the universe to be harmonious. You okay? Isn't that wonderful? I read that last night and I just chuckled for an hour or so.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
What time is it?
2:45. You guys want to take a little break?
Yes.
Break? Okay. Okay. It is only when one realizes that these modes of being projected by the divine act of imagination, Maya, the world of illusion. Isn't that interesting? He's calling Maya the divine act of imagination. God's imagination creates the world of illusion. Isn't that a cool thing to think? Okay. They are only the flittings of transient formations displaying a formless reality which avers itself finally to be basically pure meaningfulness, the ground intelligence behind all of the display, that the very subtle mind takes over from the subtle mind. And at this stage, one's sense of identity is shifted from the body of energy to the body of pure spirit. Finally, one sees that bodiness was basically spirit and consciousness intelligence. I don't suppose anyone wants to hear that again.
Yes, please.
Right? I read that kind of fast to see if you were paying attention. Does anyone know what I just said?
That we, the subtle mind goes into the very subtle mind. It goes from something into pure spirit.
Chicken liver.
Okay.
So the bottom line is we're pure spirit.
Bottom line is you're pure spirit. It's the recognition of that reality that causes us to take pause, because pure spirit means that all of those, what do we call them?
Idiosyncrasies.
Idiosyncrasies are really the world of illusion. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Divine intelligence having fun.
That's exactly my thought.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, the divine intelligence is having fun?
Don't you think so?
Oh.
We've already established that God has a sense of humor. I mean, look at the aardvark or the platypus.
Even the hummingbird.
Yeah.
You know, we might think they're not.
They're cute and fun to watch.
Oh yeah, all the frogs and.
I don't know about frogs.
But they can't sit down.
Where's that thing about the frog?
Oh, it's the other way. Oh, no. Don't end with that. Send them home with that. Not now.
Of course, God's imagination has created this reality that we see as the world of illusion, but is necessarily something we have to deal with. Remember the truck bearing down on you when you're in the middle of the street, you have to get out of the way, right? Or remember the story about the elephant and the running down the path, and the guru jumps out of the way and the cheetah stays and gets tossed into the bushes, and the guru runs over and says, "Why didn't you get out of the way?" And he says, "Well, it's all the world of illusion." And the guru says, "Yeah, but the elephant didn't know that." See? Important to remember. You ever heard that one before?
Yeah.
I may have.
It's always funny. Every time it's funny.
It's still funny, yeah.
Is that something like deers move, trees don't?
Yeah.
Or like, my friend constantly surrounds bicycles with white light and then doesn't understand why they still get stolen.
Exactly, yeah.
I surrounded with white light.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Okay, so this world of Maya that we exist within, and that seems to us to be so real because you hit your leg and it hurts, right? Nevertheless, that's an illusion as well. Still, it hurts. It avers itself finally to be basically pure meaningfulness. The ground intelligence, in other words, the basic intelligence behind all of the display, that the very subtle mind takes over from the subtle mind. Remember that the gross mind is the one that is concerned totally with physical reality. And then it does not understand the thinking of the subtle mind, which is concerned with metaphor. All right? And then the very subtle mind is concerned with an expression of divine intent. your idiosyncratic expression may be. One sees that bodiness, the gross mind, is basically spirit, and consciousness is intelligence. All right. Now, most of this is just going through it, and there's really no practices in here. It's just, pure Vilayat lecturing. But we'll go through it anyway, and then we'll do some practices when I'm done with this, reading this material.
Are you giving us copies of that to reread as well as the?
I have the copies there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
I only have 3 or 4. I'll have to make a couple
We'll
more.
have to make more, yeah.
Okay, when in one's ordinary consciousness one has no notion of one's truth body, this is where we get into the very subtle mind, the body of truth. This is something that comes up in other ways in other teachings. The truth body, therefore, all that one can do is to surmise that the truth body is that which one has experienced as clear light of bliss from the crown chakra when you're concentrating there. Now I want you to notice that as we've gone through this material, every area that you have concentrated in really has a different relationship to universal reality. Okay? All of your chakras, even though they work together, which is exactly proves the point that we were talking about earlier of all of these things are in this exist all the time here.
Same place.
Yeah.
Integrated, yeah.
Okay? That's another way to think about it, perhaps. If one remembers that the clue to shifting from the gross body or the emanation body to the truth body is by grasping the voidness of what seems to be reality, namely by realizing that the gross body is like a play of shadows as compared with the reality behind it. Okay? Now, applying the above, it will be clear that in the mirage-like appearance, one is not experiencing something that exists, but merely an appearance, even though the truck is coming and you have to move. One follows the same principle regarding the appearance of smoke, of fireflies, the candle flame. It is obvious that when one approaches a sleep condition, the memory of the body persists, but having unmasked the hoax of the visions as being mere appearance, one also includes the memory of one's body as being the sheer appearance. Consequently, it will disappear. The result will be that the subtle memory will take over from the gross memory. This is called by the Tibetans the mind of white appearance. Since it is now the subtle mind that takes over, the reasoning of the gross mind, which convinced us of the emptiness or unreality of the gross world, such as we imagined it to be, cannot function. Now that's interesting. We've used our gross mind to convince us that Maya is Maya and the world of illusion is really an illusion, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. However, the subtle mind is endowed with its own reasoning, which the gross mind could not comprehend anyway. Now a question comes to my mind that I'd like you to answer. Why do we even bother?
What,
Was
becoming
somebody asking that
manifested?
question? Why do we even bother?
To become,
To
come
learn
into
this.
this life.
Yeah, to learn this. Yeah. Why bother? Come on, you're smart. Why bother?
Well, it's a desire to experience and get closer to these realities of our being, because I think we come from there. We come from all of that, and
Why do you care?
I don't know. I've always
Do you
cared.
mean why does the very subtle being bother to be incarnated into the gross being? Is that what
No,
you're
I mean,
asking?
why are we bothering to
Oh.
learn any of this?
Oh, this.
In other words, I'm asking you, what is your motive? I know what my motivation
Well,
is. I'm asking you, what is yours?
There's a driving urge inside me. It's like, I want to know.
Okay.
Longing.
What is?
I mean, we don't want the gross mind to be the driving
It is for most people. They're satisfied with that.
driver of our life. 'Cause
Well,
then
You want more, right?
Some of us
Yeah.
are called.
Okay.
there's a lot of pain when you let the gross mind.
Yes. Okay.
So you want to get to the state of peace.
I'm asking you specifically.
Yeah,
That's how you feel.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I
That's
want to
it.
avoid the pain.
That's the one I want to know. What is it that drives you, or why even bother?
Because if I even just nutrition, if I don't follow the rules,
You're gonna get If you're a Twinkie guy, you're not gonna last long. Right?
Pretty soon there won't be any more Twinkies, so you won't have that problem.
There will, somebody will buy it up.
There'll be Twinkies. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but you need to continually renew that sense of wonder, I suppose you could say. Over maybe daily. Remind yourself, why do it?
Why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this? Because it's really, this is damn.
work. It's intense, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Well, I'm reminded why I do it on the days that I don't do it.
Ah, there you go. What
'Cause
happens?
then I have a really crappy day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't feel connected or I don't feel good, and when I start saying my prayers and giving thanks and stuff, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
I feel so much better.
So there's also an ecstatic state,
Which is lots of fun.
Can't stay there for very long.
Well, you get what you get,
Right.
and isn't that wonderful that you can do it?
Yeah.
Get into these very.
Well, actually, Tchaikovsky, I'm going to ecstatic state at Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in C minor in my car. Yeah. I was asking this one guy who just had surgery, and I was working on him, and had his voice box out, and I had that song playing in me for a couple days. It just, constantly going on in me. And he's a piano player, so I started, do you know this one? And I'm going dun 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 dun. He says, I know, but not as well as you.
Okay. So his idiosyncrasies were fluctuating in a different way. Okay. Okay. If you follow the sequence described earlier in this lesson, you will then be moving into the vision of an empty sky pervaded by the red light of the sun, which is an indication for the Tibetans that a specific mind is taking over, which they call the mind of red increase.
That's got to be Tibetan Buddhism, right?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So we're still, in this lesson, still in the focus of him teaching about Tibetan methods.
Yeah, there's another lesson to go.
Okay. Just want to clarify that.
When one has visions of an empty sky pervaded by blackness, the Tibetans see in it evidence that a still more mysterious mind has taken over, which they call the mind of black attainment. Remember when we talked about that at the very beginning of the lesson, or right after lunch? Facing this blackness, reminiscent of the cloud of unknowing, or the dark night of understanding of St. John of the Cross, there's a tendency to black out into a trance, like a trance-like state, like a swoon. Is everyone at least familiar with the dark night of the soul? Right? Which is not a negative experience, although people are, I'm in a dark night of the soul, and you're depressed. It's not the dark night of the soul, right? That's a very positive, powerful experience.
But it involves shattering.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry about that part.
Yeah, the part that's not so comfortable.
Yeah, well, as the man would say, push on through. However, it is at this stage that the very subtle mind will arise after all memory of the impressions of the subtle mind have petered out. The very subtle mind will arise after all memory of the impressions of the subtle mind have petered out. In other words, you're in the subtle mind, you work through everything. And that may take a while, a few years. Finally, you get to a point where that settles down too. You've mastered the gross mind. You're able to flip out of the gross mind and into the subtle mind. You've worked through that process, however long that takes. Now you're able to get into the very subtle mind and experience a state of what? What?
Ecstasy?
Maybe.
Or
Maybe just comfort.
Peace?
Yeah.
the stillness.
Mm-hmm. That's it. The stillness.
It's like that's where those the meditation of snow on snow landscape.
You're right. Six plane reality. Right. Land of ice and snow.
Where does the red and the black come in after this very subtle mind?
No, within the subtle mind.
Okay.
Obviously, one does not preserve the memory of the realization that the gross mind had of emptiness, nor even of the subtle mind. Somehow, the sense of emptiness is carried through from the gross mind through the subtle mind to the very subtle mind. In other words, your first indication that there's something going on here is when you touch the emptiness, the void, even for a little bit of time. Then you can start to pursue, okay, what's this mean? How do I feel about this? How can I actively pursue this, et cetera, et cetera. Okay?
Now, is that the good emptiness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the void.
Yeah.
Right. Remember, it's the inverted space within you, which is
Yeah.
larger than the outside. Okay? The advent of the very subtle mind is heralded by a vision of an appearance like that of an empty autumn sky at dawn, pervaded by a clear and radiant light. When it is the very subtle mind that meditates, it will realize that the clear light is of the nature of the truth body.
Okay. All right. So I'm reflecting on experiences. So I've had two kinds. One of having the universe inside, which appeared like starlight and all that. And the other kind where it's just the pregnant blackness.
Okay.
So what I'm understanding now is that really the one that has the universe, that's a cosmic experience.
Yeah, it's still in the gross.
That's even though it felt like it was internal, it really was a cosmic experience.
Probably, yeah.
And the second one, where it was just plain blackness and stillness and nothing, but
Mm-hmm. It's a product
that
of the
was
subtle mind.
probably a subtle mind
Yes.
experience.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the very subtle mind is a stage beyond that in which that no longer matters.
That's the truth body?
Then we're getting into the truth body, the body of truth, yes. The haq. Yeah, Anal Haq. So that when Al-Halaj said Anal Haq, he wasn't talking to the gross physical mind, which is what everyone else around him thought was going on.
Oh, and that's why he got it.
Yeah, because he was speaking a completely different language. Same word, different language.
Okay.
So be careful who you tell.
All right. So where it doesn't matter, existence doesn't matter.
No, existence matters a great deal.
Existence matters, even getting to this super subtle.
Yeah. Yeah. Now think about it
Because
this way.
that's not the same as transitioning over.
Okay, now, if you are pursuing this understanding, right, and these experiences, who's doing the pursuing?
Moi.
Oh, Well, it has a mental intent.
Yeah, but who's doing the pursuing,
That's a good question.
right? Who is it?
I'm not 100% sure when you get to that.
Remember, the harmony of the universe gets fluctuated in your idiosyncrasies.
Even in that kind of experience.
Sure.
My prejudice.
So it's the universe is expressing itself, and because of the nature of how the universe was set up, it expresses itself. Its only vehicle for expression is through you, and you're idiosyncratic,
Yay.
right?
Well, we all are. You just,
Okay.
you know.
So who's doing the expressing?
Okay, I am.
Yeah, but who are you?
Well, I am part of everything.
Yeah, you're an expression of the universe's need to understand itself, right?
Yeah, to have idiosyncrasies so
Right.
it can see itself.
Yeah, in a multitude of ways. All right? Makes you wonder what God's thinking, doesn't it? What are you thinking? You know?
But this also relates to, I don't know if it was last month or the month before, we talked about that we are co-creators and that we can affect the way manifestation happens by the choices that we make.
Yep. Yeah, sure. Of course you do. Now, at the very gross level, there's not much you're doing. But when you get into these areas, where you're actually beginning to transform your being into a much more refined, idiosyncratic expression of universal harmony, wow. Right? That has an effect. That has a genuine effect. And at the extreme, think of the effect that a genuine prophet has. Pretty serious stuff, you know? Or when you're in the presence of a great teacher, you know, like Pir Vilayat or Sri Chinmoy or something like that, you know, someone at that level. What's that feel like? You can just sit there. You don't have. I mean, how often have you heard someone sit in the presence of Pir Vilayat and just be in a state of total bliss, not have a clue what he said? Many times, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they create atmosphere. They create an atmosphere.
Yeah. You do the same thing.
Well, when he would give, you know, his talks like this, and you're meditating, and I never knew whether I was doing it or not. Sometimes I thought I was doing it, and I was totally off track. But you go into places that you don't know how to get there by yourself, and you don't know that you're going, and it's remarkable, his command of language to transport you into places that you didn't know existed, never imagined, and then he'll like land and come right back down, come right back in. But he used to go out on those limbs
now,
that,
well, yes, I know. What do you do?
Well, that's what I was just thinking, because I do that. I know that I do that for
Sure.
my students, and sometimes that's scary.
Yeah,
That's a huge responsibility.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
what do I do when?
Just in your life. When you work on these exercises, you have a genuine effect on the world around you. Okay, you do. You shouldn't look for it, because that then affects the was it the Heisenberg principle, or the Schrodinger's cat?
Schrodinger's cat.
Right. You know, you don't look for it. You know, is it a wave or is it a particle? But nevertheless, it's true that you do have an effect. I can't tell you how many times that I'd walk into some, back when I was doing cabinet making, and and the person would say to me, you know, I don't know why I trust you, but I do. Makes no sense. You're a contractor. You know? I'm supposed to trust you, but I trust you. Right? Yeah. And you're doing the same. You're having, and in that way, it's not a pebble in the pond.
Yeah.
Right? For every one of us that begins the process of transformation, you are enabling those around you to recognize that there's something more than what they are experiencing. Whether or not they do is up to them, because free will is important. Nevertheless, doing this work does have an effect. It's not just for you.
That's why it's so disappointing to me when I act out of my personality.
Oh, and you're a bad girl?
Yeah. What is that?
Okay, well. Okay, here we go, more. My interpretation of the foregoing in the light of Sufism is that consciousness, in its personal focus, processes the impressions of the physical world, such as it appears, into structures in the psyche. This corresponds to the gross mind. Okay? That makes sense. That's pretty easy. Secondly, that consciousness may also be aware of the metaphors of the psyche, which we call creative imagination. This would be the subtle mind. When all notion of a physical reality or that of imaginations have been blotted out, consciousness, bereft of an object, is resorbed in its ground, which is intelligence. The Sufi calls this intelligence nur aql. That's AQL for those taking notes. Luminous intelligence. And I believe this is what the Tibetans call the clear light. Furthermore, it becomes obvious that this is the core reality of our being, and the psyche and the body have simply accrued to it. In other words, just accepted it. And just like one can't see the stars while the sun is in the sky, this luminous intelligence looming behind our consciousness only takes over when we get into a state where the physical world seems to be just an appearance, and so the elucidations of our imagination. Consequently, just like the Tibetans, the Sufi call this Alam al-Haqiqa, or the body of truth. Precisely the same words as the Tibetans. Okay? You will note that all of the above was practiced in an awakened state, not in a sleep state, though there was a short moment of trance, which I think just about everybody here experienced to some degree. Having achieved this during the wakeful state, it can be carried into out during sleep. Having achieved this, it will hopefully be possible to carry the same experience over the threshold of death during this transition. Furthermore, I would like to point out that the emptiness of the gross world, which means its illusory character, is the realization that arises when one goes to see a film and realizes that what made one laugh and cry appeared to be shadows on the screen. There's the critical part. Whereas it was really the thinking of the filmmaker that you were laughing and crying at. Okay? The foregoing practices lead to this realization by systematically devalidating appearances, including that which transpires behind that which appears. It is all a matter of vantage point. If it weren't for the shadows, the thought of the filmmaker would be ineffective. From the human vantage point, there is a validity in those shadows. That is why Murshid introduces a second mode of awakening, which I call the second awakening, which would be like getting into the consciousness of the filmmaker and looking at his film, which is more than just getting into the consciousness of the filmmaker without his film. Okay? In other words, you need all of it, every bit of it. Okay? In other words, you know who the filmmaker is, right? Yeah. people have this sense that somehow you have to get into the clear light of bliss, and then none of this matters. But what Pir Vilayat is saying, and what Sufism says, is this matters exquisitely. This world of illusion, the world of shadows, the world of Maya. It's the ultimate in what matters. How it is that you respond to it and work your life within it, etc., that's much more. That's much trickier. Much more up to your willingness to discover your inner being, as you were saying, and do all this work, which will lead you to this place of experiencing the very subtle mind, while at the same time being able to be in the gross mind and recognizing its potentialities. Okay? Did I leave you behind?
Well, does that mean sort of like driving while you're with somebody with open eyes?
Well, think about when you're driving. That's not a bad analogy, actually. Driving down, let's say you're driving on Highway 80 and you're heading for Ohio. Okay? 350 miles away.
Yeah.
For whatever reason you would go to Ohio.
Yeah.
Right? And you start thinking, you're just driving along, and it's pretty straight, really. The whole of Highway 80 is really pretty straight.
Yeah, 80 is, yeah.
Right? And it's all pretty straight all the way to San Francisco, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Goes through over a couple of mountains, but generally it's straight.
Mm-hmm.
When you're just driving along and you start thinking, I'm hungry, what do you do?
Well, you either pull over or you grab your food bag. Or at least that's what I do.
Strap on the food bag.
You have to stop.
Yeah, you have to stop, right? Most people have to stop. You're unusual. You plan ahead. Most people don't do that. Or they just take a credit card. So you have to stop, and then you're rolling along, and you're really in a kind of a trance. You're not really thinking about where you are, and you have to remember to look for those little blue signs by the side of the
We
road.
have a GPS.
Well, even then, you still got to program the thing. You got to do something, right? You have to take an action, but that might take you a couple of exits to even think, get to that point, because you're just rolling along, not really paying attention. Oh, I'm hungry. I should probably think about a place to start. Exit goes by, zoom. Another exit, zoom. Oh, I forgot to look at the little blue signs. Zoom. Zoom. And so on until finally you bring yourself back to a state of enough of a state of conscious reality.
Gross mind.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you, okay.
Well, in your case, you can't just pull off the side of the road. You got to find a parking place.
No,
No?
I just.
Oh, you mean while you're driving?
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, eventually you're going to have to stop and find a bathroom.
Then you gotta look through the little blue sign.
Once you get
And if you have little kids in the car who say, I have to go pee-pee,
Yeah,
you better do it quick.
then your awareness is a lot more
Yeah.
focused
Yeah.
on the gross mind.
Well, yeah, and I guess there are states. It's like I think I've been really involved in the gross mind world.
Wait a minute! No, wait a minute! What do you like when you're creating a piece of art?
Oh, sometimes semi-trance.
Sure you are. I mean, you have your skills, which you've already developed, right? You don't have to think about your skills. You reach out your hand, you know exactly where the pen is or the piece, the whatever colors you're using. There's no question about which brush you're going to grab. You just know, right?
Yeah, at this point, I don't have that command, but with simple stuff,
Sure.
Yeah.
It's like me when I think about when I'm doing
right, with your
when I'm
tools.
carving. When I'm
Yeah.
carving, right? I'm watching the into the chisel.
Right.
What it's doing. And the mallet's here. It's a round mallet hitting a
Right.
round thing. I hit it every time. Don't even have to think
Yeah.
about it. It just happens.
Yeah. Cause
Right? Whereas
your
an
whole
amateur
body
would be,
knows.
God, how am I going to hit that? That's really weird. Be
Yeah,
glancing off and
interesting.
banging their fingers. And yeah. You go into a trance. And then the trance enables you to get into mythal, the world of creative imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And you're very slowly moving into ever more subtle worlds, which are all right here, but it's a matter of how your awareness interprets them.
Is it true? Do children? They can go there a little bit quicker because they're not as
They're not as right.
engrossed in the.
Well, sure. I mean, think about what's the very first thing that happens when you hit 5 or 6? Well, sometimes even earlier. Come on, we gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Come on. We gotta get you to the preschool and dump you off so I can go to work and pay for preschool, right?
Right.
We
Yeah.
gotta go. Let's go. What's the kid learning?
To hurry up.
Yeah. Well, the time is something that you,
Awareness.
whereas to the mystic is like time does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's merely an illusion. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got a feather in your brain too? Okay, so all of this expression of your own intent, your desire to discover your being is what we're doing. And that's entirely up to you. I know why I do it. Ask yourself, why do you do it? Maybe you'd rather be a bank robber. I don't know. Okay, so
They've been there, done that. No. I watched a bank robber come into my studio is on the 3rd floor of a bank, and I watched the guy come in, and
You knew?
yeah, it had a whatever dark or whatever. I can still see the image of him going in there and going, just he had an energy around him, and he was ushered back out with the cops.
Oh.
picked the wrong bank, did he?
I guess.
Okay. So what we want to do now is somebody need to use the bathroom quickly? No? Everybody okay? All of these practices that we've been doing, the breath practices, the concentrations, all have counterparts in the world of Wazif, in the world of mantra. Yeah. And there's been several that we've talked about last night, yesterday, and have been kind of floating through my mind today. The most obvious one is the haq, right? The truth. Right? But what you can do with haq, what comes before, what in the body of truth is dependent on spirit. So we can do Qudus, haq. And Qudus is in order for anything to exist, it absolutely must have spirit. It's the only way that it can exist. No spirit doesn't exist. In fact, Ibn Arabi did a whole essay on spiritlessness, which I read and still makes me shake my head. how he could do a whole proving a negative. You say you can't prove a negative, he did it. So Ya Qudus, Ya Haq, like that. And for your benefit, when you repeat a word, I mean, it's in Arabic, I know, but Aramaic, so it's kind of weird. But when these words have vibrational qualities because they're ancient language, they go a lot older than just Arabic. And so you can think of the vibration as having some kind of effect on your being, whatever it may be. Right? Ya Qudus, Ya Haq. Okay, inhale Qudus and exhale Haq. Inhale Spirit, exhale Truth. Okay, next is Ya Ali, Ya Mut Ali. Ali is the highest. Whenever you put Mutta in front of something, that's even higher, even more, higher than high.
Not quite. Not quite. It's like it's the traveling to the high. It's like the journey to the high. So you have it's Muta means great, but it's the Ali itself is the highest, and the Muta Ali is the journey, the movement toward it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I never heard that.
Well, that, I didn't hear for a long time either. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, everybody get that? Okay. Ya Ali, Ya Muta Ali. 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 Inhale Ali, exhale Muta Ali. Okay. Now, one final practice.
1 second. Just I'm going to make a comment.
Oh, okay.
So you have God is both the Ali and the Muta Ali, the journey to the Ali. So it's like a verb almost. It's like so very alive. So it has both aspects of the divine. It's like the ultimate and the journey to the ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
The movement toward that.
Okay. Now, to bring it all into perspective and solidify it within your being, is Alim Wali. Ya Alim, Ya Wali. Alim is acquired intelligence, what you learn, what the universe learns. What the universe learns as a result of your learning. That's Alim. And Wali is mastery. Discovering your own determination to become who you really are. Ya Alim, Ya Wali. 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 Exhale Alim and inhale Wali. When you exhale Alim, concentrate on the third eye. When you inhale Wali, concentrate on the solar plexus. So let's do evening prayers.
Perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the Lord of heaven and earth. Open our hearts that we may hear thy voice, which constantly comes from within. Disclose to us thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us thy great goodness. Teach us thy loving forgiveness. Raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide us. Send us the peace of thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in thy perfect being. Disclose to us thy divine light. 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 Warner of coming dangers, awakener of the world from sleep, deliverer of the message of God, thou art our Savior, the sun at the dawn of creation, the light of the whole universe, the fulfillment of God's purpose. Thou, the life eternal, we seek refuge in thy loving enfoldment. Spirit of guidance, source of all beauty, and creator of harmony, love, lover, and beloved Lord, thou art our divine ideal.